Hey, how's it going, everybody? I'm Ben from Universal Audio, and welcome back to UAD Office Hours. This week's a pretty fun week. We've been talking with lots of the UA artists and people in the family here about the new UAD Neve 1084 plugin. This just came out on Tuesday, and it's a really special model. It's similar to the 1073, but with a lot more EQ options. And just a really sexy wood frame around the plugin. That's the most important thing is that you get the upgraded wood. But we could sit here and talk about wood choices all day long, but it'd be a lot more fun if we do this with our friend. And this afternoon we've got Darrell Thorp. What's up, man?
Hi. Hey, man.
How you doing?
Good, man.
Nice.
Just hanging in there.
Yeah,
Chugging away. Plugging away.
mixing from home, I assume.
Today's recalls from home, so
Nice.
I can go into the studio once in a while. Luckily, my studio is private, so I can
Hmm.
go in and work when I need to and not be affected. It's just more and more. It's more about just going out and about, just trying to limit that whenever I can.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man.
Nice, man. Well, so I know you got your hands on the 1084 a little ahead of everybody else, and you actually helped make some presets for it. What was your first impressions when you got your hands on it?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I thought it was like just sonic quality. Now, get case in point, I did not have an actual 1074 to compare it next to. Normally, when a new plugin that UAD comes out with, like the 1176 or the Blue Stripe, or
Hmm.
when the original 1073 came out, I compared it quickly to an original one just to see what was going on.
Yeah.
But at the same point, the new 1084 is just it's amazing, and I love the functionality of the 1084 versus the 1073. Both
Yeah.
have their place in life and both are amazing, but it is nice just to have that extra little band selection there, especially on the top end, and the low pass and the high pass as well as a definite tool
Hmm.
to help out.
So when for people who are maybe a little bit more newer to plugins like this, or especially specifically the Neves, what how do you decide when the fixed high band is better versus having the variable high gain high band in the 1084? Do you have different scenarios where you like one over the other?
Uh, Maybe well, generally when it comes to high-end information, I'll say this: for drums, for whatever reason, when I'm boosting a shelf high frequency, I kind of prefer it to the shelf to start around 8K. I want a little bit more bite,
Hmm.
especially on the kick. Like I want that point on the kick drum and the air on the snare drum. I just find it more natural sounding when I'm lower in the frequency spectrum, where the tilt starts or
Yeah.
the tilt is for the shelf.
Hmm.
But for a vocal, I think that if you boost in that area, and not all the time, your vocal can kind of start to get a little harsh or a little gritty sounding. So it's
Yeah.
not as sweet. So if I can change the frequency point, then that helps my cause out a lot.
Hmm.
So in that case,
Yeah. And then the other key differentiation between like a 1073 and a 1084 is the mid band is a little bit more flexible, and it also has that high Q switch on
yes,
it.
yes.
Do you use that function very often?
Not. I mean, I would if I was trying to just. I felt like, oh, there's something spitty going on, or there's something a little bit harsh or pointy going on. Maybe it is just a little bit of a notch of a high frequency, high mid frequency that I need to take out.
Hmm.
Then yeah, that would come into play as well. That's also it. It's once again, it's a great function
Yeah.
to have,
Hmm.
or an option to have. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah.
so when you're kind of working on a project and you pulling up a mix, or a specific track inside of a mix,
Yeah.
what's kind of your thought process for choosing, all right, man, should I go with a Neve here, should I go with an API, should I go with an SSL? Like what runs through your brain to kind of land on a certain sound for a track?
Boredom.
Mm-hmm. Which one haven't I seen lately? Which one of my friends have I not played with in a week, right?
So sick of me. No, no, no. Um, um, I'm definitely. I'll say this: I'm definitely a creature of habit when it comes to mixing. I think a
Hmm.
lot of us are. Maybe some of us are, and some of us
Hmm.
aren't. I do feel that uh, it is an amazing workflow when you've had enough experience in the studio and listening environments to figure out which pieces of gear you think will work to achieve a certain sound quicker versus something else. And there are times when I stray from my normal signal flow or signal chain that I'm wanting to do that I know generally works 80% of the time. And I try something else and then I'm like, well, I don't think it works as well. And I just go back to what I should have done or thought I was thinking in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not always the case, man. You know, but it depends on who the singer is. And like if you're talking about putting an EQ on a vocal, then who's the singer, male or female?
Mm-hmm.
Fast song, slow song.
Yep.
High register, lower register.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of these factors, I think, come into play when I'm picking an EQ for a vocal.
Yeah.
Whether it's a Neve or an API or a 1070 or 1073 or the 1081, like or 1084. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So,
There's because there's so many options, and like it's to me it's kind of it's one of the hardest things to express to people. Like, yeah, we have all these options now, and like there's certain functionality things, right? Like the API, you're getting the stepped gain. In a Neve you get stepped frequencies, but you have infinite, you have control over the gain. So like you have some of these functional things, but then you also have the aesthetic aspects of it, of like what kind of color, what kind of built-in tone do you get out of each device just by inserting it on the chain.
Correct. Yeah, and the same with the I don't know if people have ever messed with or played with before, but if you insert the UAD 1073 or 1084 and start messing with the gain and the EQ is not engaged, it still changes the sound.
Yeah.
Like an original one does.
Yep.
So there's something to be said about just putting a 1084 on the channel and not engaging the EQ. You're just going through the preamp just to add depth, warmth, whatever it is you may be looking for. It's doing some processing. There's something going on there still without something going on there. So.
Yeah, well, and that's it's one of those things that, especially if people, I remember when plugins did not have that, right? When you would put on the 1073, you're like, you get the EQ. It's like doing the shape of the EQ, but it wasn't really adding any of the flavor or the color that it just inherently had. But these newer models that especially on the UAD side, like that's more than 50% of why people love them so much is just like the inherent sound that they're giving you on the track.
Yeah, and they it's amazing because they don't suck. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
I would highly say I could 80% of the stuff that I do is all UAD. It's just, and in fact, I run out of UAD power constantly, and it annoys me when I do.
Because you're having to freeze or commit tracks and then continue to you're spoiled is what it is.
Yeah, spoiled brat. Yeah. So
nice. Well, I know we could sit here and just kind of talk in the ether about EQs and Neves and stuff, but actually it would be a lot more fun, I think, to show people with some audio and some music behind this. So do you mind sharing your screen?
All right, so let me share my screen.
Cool, got it.
So there's my Pro Tools.
Pro Tools. Still remember what that looks like?
Oh, there we go. Now I can still see you. Yeah, sorry. I haven't made the official jump to Luna. Yeah. How do you want to do it, Ben? You want me to just chat a minute? We want to play something?
Yeah, let's play some stuff. Let's well, first of all, who's the artist and what's the song and just
I'm gonna butcher the name. So this band is Noises they're from Tijuana, Mexico. And I met them about a year and a half ago, and we started a nice relationship. This is the 4th song I've done with them.
Nice.
I produced, recorded, and mixed this track. You can find it on good old Apple, all of your digital streaming retailers.
Nice.
But the band lives in Tijuana, but we recorded this in San Diego. there's a really cool little studio, Rarefield Recording, in right in the heart of San Diego that we found. It's a great spot, and cut the whole record there, or
Nice.
sorry, cut this song there. Excuse me,
Nice.
just the song there.
So it's all live instrumentation.
All live instrumentation, yeah, and they are a 5-piece band, but in this case, it was just more of an acoustic track. So let me just play the intro, verse, and chorus of that.
Cool. Yeah. Perfect.
Paisajes de color que se pintan justo en ti. Quiero vivir sin miedo, ser feliz y que pase lo que pase y perderme siempre en ti. Tu sonrisa, tu esa chispa que no tiene nadie más. Yo quiero subir.
So yeah, that's
Dude,
the song.
It's so clean. Like it's super clean. Really, the transient detail of the guitar and percussion.
Thanks, man.
And that vocal. Let's start with the start of the show here.
Okay.
Man. That vocal tone is crazy good.
So so at Rarefield, they have gosh, I'm pretty sure it's a Neve. I think it's a Genesis. So it's the newer analog style console, but then it has. You can customize what kind of preamps you want. Preamps and EQ chain you want in it, funny enough. So I'm almost positive it was a reissue 1073 preamp EQ. And the vocal, he was singing on a Neumann 47 tube in this case. So,
so you got the deck stacked in your favor already of it.
Yeah, so I had the deck stacked in my favor already. I really do. So in this case, I mean, I think when I was mixing this, I kind of got such a really pretty tone out of the microphone chain anyways. All I wanted to do was just add a little bit of 110 hertz just to thicken it up a little bit. And then normally what I do is, especially on a vocal, I just go ahead and high pass it, like 70 hertz, 80 hertz, whatever it is. There's, in a vocal, there's just really nothing down there that's just bad information that's clouding up your mix anyway. So I immediately, even if I'm not going to do anything to the EQ itself, I'll just high pass it.
Yeah, just to give it a little bit of trim down there, because it's a super gentle high pass, right? Like it's kind of just a soft, taking out some lows.
Low, yeah. Anything below 50 is kind of, especially a vocal, a guitar. So I can solo. So this is Moy.
Yo quiero subir, yo quiero ver el mundo desde ahí, ver paisajes de color.
So that's the vocal sound. So, I mean, right then and there, I got a great tone, but then, of course, I could do a little.
Yo quiero subir.
If I wanted to make it a little more pop.
Yo quiero ver el mundo desde ahí.
But
ver paisajes de color.
I kind of felt like when I was doing this track and mixing this track that I didn't want it to sound just blatantly pop. I wanted it to have a little bit of a Latin feel with a modern kind of approach in the recording, kind of melted together. That was my thought process. And then two, the band, when they hear me doing stuff sonically when recording, they get very attached to it.
Yeah. So you don't want to venture too far. You don't want to record it this way and then deliver it this way.
Funny enough, the first mix I did of this song after we finished tracking, I did more of a pop mix, and they were like, "Whoa!" They did not like it at all. So, so I went back to my rough and just listened to it a little bit and said, "Okay, let me just clean stuff up sonically a little bit," and did vocal rides, and then rides on the strings, which didn't, which there's strings on this track, which kind of kick in on the second verse and chorus. So, did a lot of that automation there.
Yeah. So exactly. So you had the potential to kind of drive it in different directions, but ultimately, yeah, to keep it true to the inspiration of how they recorded it and to the vibe.
Correct.
You're always, as a mixer, right? You're always kind of weighing between these two different options, and both are valid.
Right.
But it's hard to know exactly where to pick until you try something.
Correct. Yeah. It's a total trial and error thing. So.
Nice.
So I mean, and then just go.
Tu sonrisa, tu figura, tu mirar.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Y esa chispa que no tiene nadie más. Yo quiero subir.
So then one of the cooler things that I noticed, let's just go a little bit crazy, because you can see, I think someone at UA, when I sent these presets in, I think it was George. George was like, "Okay, the vocal distortion thing, that was rad." I'm getting a lot of requests more and more for people to just say, "Hey, can you drive the vocal? Can you drive the drums? Can you drive the bass? Whatever it is." Actually, funny enough, cranking the input gain for the bass on a UA 1073 or 1084 is fun as hell.
That's the moneymaker right there, right?
It's the moneymaker right there. So, and obviously it'll do it in stages as well, but I'm going to go to the extreme one just right away. And then I hope this isn't crazy.
Tu sonrisa, tu figura, tu mirar.
So right there.
Y esa chispa que no tiene nadie más.
That's not obnoxious.
No, it's still musical. Like it's pushed, and it's got more like grit and kind of emotion. You know, it's highlighting, his peaks are kind of getting highlighted with some sonic, a little bit of extra gravel to it.
So I'm kind of curious, since I'm not really doing that much with this. So if I hit the compare, compare just does it there. I can't. Well, I could just
do a second instance, and
let me just do a second instance and then go back to. I should have done it before. Sorry.
Well, if we were in Luna right now, you could undo, and it's my responsibility as UA's host to heckle you guys.
I think you should just keep peppering.
Exactly. Just every chance I get, like, well, I mean, if this was Luna,
that's what I was doing. If this was Luna, okay. So there's the.
Tu sonrisa, tu figura, tu mirar. Esa chispa que no tiene nadie más.
That's pretty cool, even though that's not what he asked me to do, but
yeah.
Tu sonrisa, tu figura, tu mirar.
Way louder. Sorry there, UA family.
Tu sonrisa, tu figura, tu mirar.
There's the clean version.
Tu sonrisa, tu figura, tu mirar. Esa chispa que.
So that's one cool thing to do. And then Ben, let's go ahead and skip down to the bass, what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because you can do the same thing. So in this case, the bass was it's a DI. And it's an active bass is there as well.
Yeah.
So if you just take it, sounds like that's boring. So what happens when we do? Definitely takes away that DI flavor out of it. And if I just boost a bunch
Volar. Tu sonrisa, tu figura, tu mirar. chispa que no tiene nadie más.
Might help too if I could.
Para juntos poder volar. Tu sonrisa, tu figura, tu mirada. Y esa chispa.
Should have done that in the first place.
Dude, that it is one of those things where, like, in solo, you're like, wow, that's kind of like you're overdriving a bass amp or something, right? So it feels too aggressive, and then you throw it into the sauce of everything else. You're like, oh, now it's just got some nice presence, and it's kind of like it still feels full, and you're still getting richness without, but you're getting more presence at the same time without really having to like step over other things' toes.
And I know we're talking about the 1084, but by the way, the UAD, the oxide, that distorts like.
Right,
that is musical,
just harmonic. It's a real even, just beautiful saturation.
Gorgeous.
Built into every channel of Luna for free.
Oxide
is the built-in tape extension. Yeah, so you can.
Oxide's the built-in, but if you have,
and if you own the Studer plugin, then you can also use the Studer in that tape extension spot too.
But you can't use the ATR.
Not the ATR, correct?
Okay.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
We've been getting lots of people asking for through the Luna's also got this kind of cool thing. It's got a feedback button built into it, so people, including yourself, once you have it open, you can get in there and ideas or feedback or just problems that you run into. You can always, people are sending us tons and tons of feedback.
Actual not console feedback, not audio feedback.
Yeah, exactly. Not the bad kind of feedback, the good kind of feedback.
Well, funny enough, though, the bad kind of feedback is a lot of how is it Over Me, Come to Beatles, doom, 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 that's console feedback. So
that little extra, the womb.
Yep. That's a tape delay feeding back into itself.
No shit. I didn't know that.
Yes.
Have you ever pulled off a crazy feedback? Like, I've done it on delay tracks before, of like feeding a delayed track back into itself a little bit.
Dude, it's really weird in a DAW. Maybe Pro Tools, it does not do it that well. I'm not sure about how maybe Logic would handle it. I'm kind of curious, but on an analog console, when you make a tape delay, like an ATR or whatever, and put it on a SYN and a fader return, and then take the same SYN and add more into it. The way it feeds back is just
it's gorgeous,
insanely musical and gorgeous. But it does not quite do it on the DAW. I don't know if it's I'm not sure why.
It must have something to do with with how it's just with the analog. It's happening with there's no cycle. There's no like start or end point to how it's doing it.
Correct. I'm not. Yeah, it'd be interesting. Sorry, I just muted you. Sorry, I'm just moving the screen around so I can look center instead of.
Yeah.
I should ask some programmers about that, like why, or nobody's ever asked, or they've never thought of it, or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those like really esoteric tricks that they're like, yeah, we could do it, but you're gonna do it. You're gonna do it once a decade.
Not me.
Not you. Do it on every record, won't you?
Well, it's one of the big reasons I still really prefer to have a console to track. Really, really prefer tracking with a console.
Yeah,
it's a lot more organic and ergonomic. But
from like a speed and being able to like put a bunch of things, get it all down in the tape.
Well, I can route easily too. It's easier for routing when you're on a console. It's easier. I just don't have to think about it as much.
Yeah. So nice. Well, let's pull up that acoustic guitar track, because I saw you peeked that you had the 1084 on there as well.
Yes.
So I'm wondering what your tricks are there for acoustics. Oh, just leave it flat. Easy.
So let's talk about it again. So this one, let's see. I don't remember. Actually, no, I think it was the 47 tube, and it's a gut guitar, a nylon gut guitar.
Yeah.
So it was probably the same 1073 chain. I don't know if I compressed it or not. Doesn't sound like I did. So, but well, let's just talk about it. So first of all, we'll just do a little high pass on it. And then for a guitar like this, man, I would just pretty much just add several 10K just to get it going.
You're getting a lot more finger action, a lot more frets.
Yep. So then I just copy. So it's the same instrument. It's just the double is a different part. But here's the thing too. Sometimes, like on an acoustic guitar, I find that I can brighten it. Compare about my mistakes. So sometimes I can find I can brighten it. But one of the things that I'd always learned from so many other engineers that I've always worked with throughout my career was you get an acoustic. Sorry, I'll stop. You get an acoustic guitar, and then you immediately just start brightening it up, and then they leave the low end alone. But then when I started working with Beck, especially on Morning Phase, he was like, no, I want more. I want the guitar to be massive and huge.
Yeah. And
so I always kind of think about in an acoustic guitar, actually not making it small and chimey, actually making it a big, big part of the tonal sound. So a great thing to do is, and I know it sounds crazy, I'll still high pass at 70 hertz, but then I'll add. I'm going a little bit extreme in this situation, but it would be similar. What I would do is add either 110 or maybe even 220 sometimes, depending on the pitch of the song.
Yeah.
Just to make the guitar feel bigger.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's almost like simulating a little bit of a proximity effect, right? Like
yes.
It's almost
correct.
kind of pulling the guitar a little bit more forward into the mic, but on a more consistent plane.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, I do a lot of the same kind of techniques and tricks I do on a lead vocal, as I do a guitar, or an acoustic guitar, is where I brighten it up, usually because I need the clarity, but then sometimes I feel like a lead vocal, like especially a woman, female, where if she has a smaller voice and it's a little bit on the harsh or push forward in the upper mid, if you thicken it up down here in the 110 hertz range, a couple dB, it makes her voice kind of fill out a little bit more in the mix. And it also helps kind of trick your ear into thinking those higher frequencies or high mid frequencies are getting pushed back. But I'm always looking for clarity and size. So in my everyday kind of approach.
And so, but when you this obviously with this session, it's very clear, like every sound has a place, it has a role. And that was kind of the thing that blew me away when you played that first pass on it. Is like you used to have guitar in the middle, vocal in the middle, percussion super, very wide, just giving you this big open space, while being very simple in terms of the stereo placement. But it gives you a big kind of massive sort of sound stage. When you're dealing with a more dense production, does anything kind of change for you for how you have to approach both panning and EQ placement of tracks?
I would say, yeah, I think it does change. Panning wise, I try to keep things similar. I'm not a big 10 and 2 kind of panner guy. I'm kind of like just a hard left, center, and right panning situation. I just found it to be. I think your mix ends up being wider if you do that.
Yeah.
EQ wise, yeah, I think so, because I think on a faster song or an up tempo or even more like a rock song, I feel like in those instances you need more clarity than
size.
Yes, you need clarity and size than. If you were just recording a jazz quartet or something, that to me is extremely easy to make really sound huge and open, because the way they're playing and the tempo they're playing at. and it's just a little bit of EQ, and it just feels massive, and you can hear every detail.
Yeah.
But a metal record, I know for a fact they're always going for clarity and brightness because you have to hear the attack of every 16th and 32nd note. They want you to hear that. In order to achieve that, you got to just crank the EQ.
Which is why those records you'll get like, you can have a big forceful bottom, super scooped out, kind of low mid, and then just as bright as your eyes can handle,
or teeth
exactly
can handle,
right?
Really, yeah. The enamel on your teeth can handle.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true.
So yeah, I mean, it is, and it's such an important thing. I think hopefully people have been picking up on this, especially this week now that we've been talking so much more about the mixing side of things, and specifically geeking out about this 1084 EQ is like the context matter is the only thing that really matters. Like, and I love that you're not just approaching it from like what's the genre, but like the speed and like the size and the production thickness, like all these, every factor matters. So there's no like one, hey, do this trick and now all of your vocals are going to be great, or do this trick and your acoustics are going to be great.
It doesn't work that way. I wish it did. Make everything a lot easier.
It would, right?
Yeah.
But so like when you're, so with presets, like do you find yourself kind of working from them as like starting points, or do you just kind of open up and grab and go as you please?
I'm an open up, grab and go as I please guy. That's the way I generally tend to work. I do save presets for particular situations. Vocal delays is a good one, especially when you're just trying to get a quarter note or an eighth note delay, and you always want to start at like a 30% feedback. That just seems to be the right kind of good starting point, that kind of thing. When I'm ever trying to scoop out harshness from a multi-band EQ, I usually save a few presets for that.
Yep.
But then, hey man, it's not a bad idea to do but I will say that my API 550A, it defaults to be the high frequency and low frequency come up as a shelf, but then the high frequency is fixed at 10K, and I've already got a 40 dB bump.
So you put it in because you want that.
I know I'm probably going to go there.
Yeah.
And if it's too much, I back it off. Rather than my lazy ass sitting there and hitting the plus button twice.
Exactly. It's really difficult. It's a lot of extra pressure.
But it does default to a bell curve and not a shelf.
Okay.
So
yeah, so it's a little more focused there. Yeah.
Yes.
Nice.
So I want it to be on a shelf the whole time.
Well, speaking of the top end stuff, do you one of the other unique features to the 1084 is the fact that it has a low pass as well as a high pass.
Yeah.
I know, speaking personally, like, man, I never touched a low pass knob for probably 10 years. And like, it was just for whatever reason, like I saw it on so many, like on every SSL channel and lots of neat, like I would see it everywhere, but I've just never ever used it. Can you please tell the people when and where they should be thinking about using a low pass knob on an EQ?
Me personally, man, I always feel like a low pass is number one, first and foremost. It's for either removing unwanted noise. Certain keyboards, like a good example, an original Prophet 5, and maybe even some of the reissues of the Prophet 5 do the same thing. There's certain patches that are extremely noisy.
Yeah.
And they're just spitting out this 12K, 16K hiss.
Yeah.
That really is not part of the tone at all. Part of the patch. So that's when a high pass comes into play.
Yeah.
Just go in there and do the high pass at 8K, and you're all of a sudden you're getting rid of this obnoxious hiss that sometimes can be a couple dB louder than the actual source. String, crazy. Yeah, and it's just the way, these analog, that's the way they work, and that's the funny enough, and sometimes it feels like if you try to remove that, it would actually deteriorate the actual source tonality. So you just leave it alone and high pass it.
Yep.
And that's quite honestly is what I use a high pass for. But then sometimes you could cut drums in an extremely bright room and you love the way the rooms sound, but you feel like the cymbals are getting too splashy. You can high pass or excuse me, low pass. Low pass, high cut, blah, blah, blah.
But like in a situation like that, how would you decide to go for the low pass versus taking the high shelf and just cutting it down?
In certain situation, I'd probably do a little of both or play with both, because the way the curve works on the low pass and the way the curve works on a shelf of high frequency could be slightly different. One could just sound better to you or work better in the mix to you.
Yeah.
So that would be an extreme situation of trying figuring out both.
Yeah. Totally. And that's then, go ahead.
Oh, well, last but not least, it's just, the good old radio effect.
Yep, exactly. The just band limit, just pull both of them as far as they can go, and then you're instantly kind of getting into a radio zone. Yeah,
and other things to do is if you're trying to do a drum loop thing for the second verse, instead of having the full drums in, bust the drums down to a mono or stereo 1084, do a high pass and a low pass.
Yeah.
On the thing, crank the input gain way up, see what kind of distortion you get out of it, and then blend it into taste.
Yeah. Well, hopefully not everyone's like me and they don't avoid those low pass knobs for years or decades at a time. Because it's highly useful, man. And like, I remember watching a video where I can't remember who it was, but they were talking about how they basically. They were using low pass and high pass on just about everything to some degree, and like I think it was in relation to the SSL channel, and they so low pass you're used to using that for cleaning up mud, but they were also using that high pass to say to help differentiate between a lead vocal and a background vocal. To like leave the lead vocal full range and full
range,
air.
Right? Yeah.
But then a stack of vocals, just that first click, was it 18K? Like it's pretty high up there. It's
really high.
It's really gentle. It's really high, but it just kind of rounds out that top end. And then obviously the more you bring that down, the more filtered you're going to get. It can help. It really helps with the kind of delineation between those, and same trick applies for like guitars.
Sure.
You can use that if you've got like a stack of electric guitars and you really want to make a really thick boy down the middle that can it's just all the not mud but like a bottle of kind of like a bass support kind of thing rolling off that top kind of keeps it from interfering with your vocal or some of the drums.
Yeah, that's also another where you're trying to stack things to play along with like a bass guitar. And then actual electric guitar will solo it, so you can
make them work together.
Yeah, make them work together by removing all the high frequency information that a guitar inherently has. Naturally, and just keeping it. Oh no!
Oh shit! We got Zoom bombed.
Oh no!
What's up?
What up, Will?
How are you, my friend?
Dude, it's been forever.
I know. How's Corona quarantine? Whatever.
Whatever. How about you?
Awesome acoustics there in that bedroom. I can really hear the awesomeness.
Yes. Yeah. Which is why when I work at home, I just do headphones.
Yeah. So.
Smart.
Plus, there's no way I could. I in a perfect world, I could go buy a house with a nice guest house in the back and then treat that.
Yeah.
And then that way I can make as much noise as I want without disturbing my family, which I'm sure you know about all too well.
You got babies now. You got a baby. So.
I have a baby. Well, he's a almost 3-year-old baby, but still.
That's a baby.
Yeah.
Well, for people who are sitting here watching and being like, "Who's this man that just Zoom bombed in?" Just Zoom. We just got. Luckily, he has pants on. I think. We got Will Shanks.
Have you
here.
seen that? By the way, John Oliver did that spiel because a lot of news anchors in LA. Are you wearing pants?
Are you wearing pants?
By the way, thank you for joining us, Mr. Shanks. But are you wearing pants?
Well, you remember the maestro?
It's the go-to, yeah.
Remember Seinfeld when they had the maestro and he would just walk around with no pants before his performance because he didn't want to mess up the crease.
And wrinkles?
Screw that.
Nice. Well, but so Will, you're here for a reason because you're the product manager. You're kind of the golden years behind tuning our UAD plugins, including the 1084.
Well, Darrell, I am constantly at your disposal. But if you have any questions, or if anybody out there in the Zoom land has any questions, I'm here, ready, willing, and able to answer those questions.
You know all the deep, dark, dirty secrets of these Neve plugins, don't you?
So so here's the thing. When the 1073 came out, how long has the 1073 been out now? 4 or 5 years easily?
Probably 6 to 7 now.
Oh, geez, gosh. Okay, see, I can't keep straight anymore. But you were the one, Will. I was talking to you at NAMM about the 1073, and I told you, I said I put a 1073 on, and I started EQing, and I heard it changing, but I realized that the EQ switch wasn't engaged. And I was like, dude, what's up with that? And you were the one, well, that's the way a real 1073 works. And I'm like, what?
It has, these dependencies where when you disable the EQ, it's not truly disabled. There's interaction between the preamp and the EQ amplifiers. That means that if you start screwing with the gains or whatever, it's still going to affect the tonality of the thing, which is crazy.
It's so weird.
It's never
so nuts. But it's probably why the reason it works and the reason it sounds so darn good. So
that is it. There's a lot of interaction. I mean, if you go back to the original 1073 plugin we made, it was just the EQ and it was linear. So no amplifier emulation.
Right.
But even then, when we made that EQ, there was a component to the modeling which was to capture the interaction of the high and the low bands because they actually share an amplifier. So when so when you chain one, it actually can affect the other filter. Oh. So that is another detail of it that, it's part of the sauce. We don't really go out of our way to, talk about all these fun little details, but they're all in there. I mean, competitively, our competitors are still kind of not even there yet, where they're not really capturing those band interaction.
Right.
It's just part of the fun, and lots of EQs have it, like the 560 EQ.
Yes.
There's tons of band interaction or a Pultec or whatever.
Yeah.
Especially a Pultec. Yeah.
Yeah. So the passive EQs definitely have a ton of band interaction.
And I would say maybe to the point of like all the UAD family that's listening, or like the 5 people that are watching us, I don't know. But
200, yeah.
Oh, 200. Oh, sweet. But I will say that the fun thing about a lot of the UAD stuff, especially with the input transformer or microphone preamp technology modeling that you guys are doing so much, and I use it all the time, especially in mixing, is when I get tracks that are really kind of toneless or lifeless because they've been recorded on whatever, FireWire USB device that's out there. I crank up the gain just to get it to pop and have some more life to it. And then I start EQing and compressing. It's just such an infinite tool of it's the Neve 1073 and the 1084, and then also the SSL. When you pop that thing into the E channel strip, when you pop that thing into mic mode, like,
it's right there. I do that flip almost every track that has the headroom to take it. I'm hitting flip and going straight back into the mic pre side of that when I'm mixing.
Insane.
Yeah, it's when you're designing this stuff, and we have the capacity to do what we call like an end-to-end emulation. There's so many different ways that people may use a circuit. Right. Abuse it, use it in a really clean manner. So the idea that, you want to capture the whole thing allows any use case. And that's the idea is no matter how hard you want to push it or how much you want to back it off, it's still going to respond like the target hardware.
Yeah.
Because, everybody's working in different ways, different workflows, different styles of music, and it all kind of like what you were saying a little bit earlier, it's really context based. So you might as well have the whole enchilada there if you need it.
Do we get red sauce or green sauce?
I prefer the green, perhaps today.
The verde.
Well, and Will, something that we haven't had a chance to really touch on all week because we've been focusing so much on like the EQ and the preamp coloring that's available, and we've had auditioning this all week in more of a mix sort of scenario. But the one of the coolest things about 1084 is you can use it as a unison plugin. It's like, if you're using it with an Apollo inside of Console or Luna, you can load it up in that unison slot. What's kind of the benefit to using the 1084 there? Like, what's kind of the extra length that people are getting sonically from recording straight through the 1084 UAD plugin?
Sure. Well, specific to the Neve preamp design from this 80 series era, it's actually a pretty complex design, let's say, compared to, something more modern, or even like an SSL. There's actually a dual amplifier design to the mic input range. And, when you get past that off, the off setting that's in the middle there, it actually kicks into a dual amplifier configuration. And so there's a lot of tonal variety between the first part of the range and the second part of the range. If you click on, let's say, click on mic, that will put you into that range there. There you go. But anyway, under unison, because of its ability to adapt to the resistive impedance of the real hardware, you're actually getting up to 3 different impedance results as you're going through that range. So it's one impedance setting as you're going from off all the way to the second off, and then a second range or a second impedance as you go to the second part of the range. Then, of course, if you're switching between the high and low impedance on that switch up there, that's giving you yet another impedance option.
Right. And that's basically, so for people who aren't as familiar with how impedance and microphones work, that's essentially, changing the kind of the connection between the microphone and the mic preamp, and it slightly shifts the tone, right?
Correct.
It shifts the tone. I mean, best practice is you try to match the impedance of a microphone with your preamp. But of course, in these days, it's just kind of a creative tool, and you get different tonal shifts by pairing different mic pre's with different mics, and the impedances of those mic preamps have an effect on the color and the response of the mic and how much gain it provides to it. So all that stuff's in play when you're using it in unison, which is really cool. I mean, that's just one facet of the upside you get when using the 1084, the 1073, or any of the other unison preamps for recording.
Okay, well, question for you then. Where's the pad in the chain? Because there's a really cool thing when you're trying to blow up a preamp and distort it a bit. Sometimes the EQ, just hitting the EQ hard as well, comes into play with that musical distortion, especially in Neves. So, but is the pad before the preamp or after the preamp? Do you know where it is in the circuit chain?
It's actually in the case of unison, it's before. It's a real physical pad.
Okay. It's before the preamp?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Just like it would be on a a real Neve.
Right. Right.
And then when you're using it in mix mode like this, is the pad still it's still before the preamp gain as well?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, it doesn't have the physical quality to it, but it gets you, it's an approximation or a pretty close approximation of what the pad would be doing. So yeah, it's in the same.
Why did you guys decide to do the channel fader and the output gain?
Well, because the 1073 or the 1084 picks off, it has an amplifier, an output amplifier, but it precedes the fader.
Oh, it does, yeah.
Yeah. So you can actually push into that output amplifier and clip it as well. So that's why, not all of our unison preamps have that output trim.
Right.
It depends on the design and where, the fader lands in the circuit, or if there's a secondary output buffer or amplifier, makeup amplifier in the design. But with the 1073 or 1084, it's already in that module. So the way, so again, back to my point of let's create it so that you can use any workflow you might come across. You can actually, gain down the input stage and gain up the output stage and actually clip it before you clip the input. And that way, with that last clean, colorless output stage, you can pad it back down again as you're hitting, your hard drive or within your mix.
Wow, cool.
Interesting. And that, we've talked about it a little bit in a couple of the other sessions this week of how important it is, having the fader and the digital trim at the end. yeah, it still gives you all the non-linearities that you would typically get on a full Neve channel strip.
Right.
Wow.
And, you know, other things like the Helios, it wasn't necessary to have that final trim because you can't push into the output amplifier in the same way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's just whatever the context of the design is, we'll add it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's actually quite cool. I mean, it's not necessarily proper, obviously, on a console to work that way, but you could do it if you wanted to, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's got a different character to it than the other amplifier.
Nothing says fun like a distorted guitar.
Just,
1073, 1084, just distorted to hell guitar solo.
Mm-hmm. I was watching, there's this band I see pop up on YouTube all the time called Nothing But Thieves. And they're doing, like, a lot of bands are recording at home right now and posting kind of quarantine versions of their songs, and they did a production breakdown of one of theirs.
Oh, really?
And I was just kind of clicking through to see what they were doing, and basically every distorted guitar or distorted bass on that entire session was a UAD 1073 over in the mic mode, like no pedals. They were just recording direct guitars, fuzzing it out using the 1073.
Such a cool tone.
It really is.
That's one other cool thing you can do. What, you know, if you're not in unison and you just want to blow something up, you can still access that mic part of the range in mix mode and just a standard plug-in and just blow it the hell up.
Yeah.
You know, just like you could physically if you wanted to put a line level signal into the mic input, you could do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that's an area where.
But it's such a different distortion.
A totally different distortion. And we spent tons of time just making sure that even in that crazy over the top use case, it matches the hardware.
Mm-hmm.
So go forward and use it as just a crazy distortion box.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things I was teasing everybody about yesterday on the stream of the lengths that, especially Will, I know the lengths that you go to when you're evaluating these plugins, and how, like, obviously, you know, the sweet spot is fairly, you know, you can hit that fairly quickly with, you know, with the code, but then what you do of, like, going to any extreme setting and making sure at the extreme setting between the hardware and the plugin version, they match. So you're always kind of running it through both at the same time and going back and forth, right?
Yeah. And you know, at those extreme settings, really crazy things happen that are also modeled. There's something that occurs called dynamic duty cycle, where the entire system starts to collapse under the pressure of all that incoming signal.
Yes.
And it actually it drops out temporarily and then comes back dynamically. It's called dynamic duty cycle.
That's what it is?
Yeah.
I've always kind of thought that was because of the circuitry itself, because it's Class A, correct? It's just the way it's designed. It's not really designed to distort in a weird way. It
was designed at the time the best it could possibly be. And by today's standards, you know, I mean, I've even heard Rupert Neve say, I don't understand why people just love this old technology. You know, I'd like to move on from it. But, you know, he made it the best that he could, but there's still a lot of, you know, by today's standards, quirks in the design and kind of hacks to make it work the way it did with the best of its ability. But, you know, I don't know if it's necessarily being Class A, but yeah, it's not designed to be pushed that hard.
No, it's not.
But you still can, and it doesn't break it.
No, but it is interesting how, like, a Neve distorts differently than an API, but then a 1073 and 1084, and then 1081 distorts completely differently.
Yeah,
different
that one's Class AB, so
yeah,
it stands to reason it's gonna. It might be subtle when it's in its more linear states, but
correct.
When you're pushing it to those crazy states, it's going to sound totally different.
But then electrodyne distortion is horrible. It's not musical.
Right. Yeah. And there's such a thing as not great sounding distortion.
Yes, there is. But for the most part, you know, I feel like just in our world of everything is so many things are being captured in a digital way. Just anything that we can do to kind of get things to sound a little bit more exciting to our ear is just great tools to have at your fingertips, you know, with a couple clicks of a mouse. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
What you can do.
So one of the interesting sort of byproducts of doing these end-to-end emulations is now you kind of got to start thinking about headroom and operating level and, you know, maintaining unity gain.
What?
In the digital space. It's like you kind of brought back that problem, if you will, of maintaining good.
Can you explain what unity gain is? I don't even know what that is, and I haven't stuck to that.
What are you talking about, bro?
Unity gain. Never seen that before. What unity? What?
Yeah.
I had somebody say that to me once. That's not unity gain. I was like, and
your point is?
Well, point is, okay, forget it. Make it a jazz record.
Exactly. Well, Darrell, I know. Having worked with you on other video stuff before, one of your favorite things to do is you put that trim plugin in at the end of every one of your channels.
Yeah, which I've got going on a lot here right now.
Exactly. Yeah. And for anyone that's not familiar, it's actually because you do love unity gain so much. You love leaving your faders at 0 as much as possible, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Ben.
Calling it out.
You called it out. But to be honest, though, the reason that is not the case anymore in Pro Tools, but the reason I was doing that in the beginning is because when you touched, sorry, I don't know, somebody's weird is calling me. When you touched a fader in version Pro Tools, it was either 9 or 10 is when they changed it. When you moved the fader, it was reducing the bit depth. But when you used the trim, it did not change the bit depth. So I found that if I used the trim plugin to be my volume adjustment and kept my fader at 0, the mix would have way more dimension and depth. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But then I just got so used to that workflow that I still do it.
Well, it's a little. If other people out there, and I do this as well. Like I kind of aspire to have as much of my mix hanging around 0 as possible.
Right.
Again, this is another case where having a fader and an output trim on the 1084 can actually help you. You can almost use. In an analog emulation of that trim happening here inside the plugin, and it may not be Unity where you can A/B it perfectly, but at least then you're kind of starting all your faders and your rough mix or your static mix from a good spot.
And I do like it too because if you've got a perfect example is the electric guitar. Usually guitars, even if they're moderately recorded at a moderate level, I'm trying to use on my bits level. Usually, in order to keep it somewhere in the mix of reality, it's down -12, -15, sometimes even more if your mix bus isn't running that hot. So that resolution, by the time you put is the fader's already, the fader can be down here, so to speak.
Yep.
And then if I'm going to automate on one of my control surfaces, grabbing the fader down at this point, it's annoying to me. So I'd rather it be
up where the resolution's better.
Up where the resolution's just a little bit better, and that's just more for personal touch, personal feel more than anything than sound, because they've totally revamped. I don't think Logic has ever worked that way. I'm sure Luna doesn't work that way, but Pro Tools has been revamped years ago, so you don't have to worry about that anymore. The fader can be anywhere it wants to be. It's still full bit rate.
Exactly.
Hey, Darrell, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Are you a linear guy or a circular guy when it comes to your mouse response to parameters?
Oh, and you're talking about the UA choice?
Yeah. Do you just go like, what are you in right now? If you grab that knob, you're in configuration linear. Yeah. So classic Pro Tools linear.
Yeah.
Just pull it down.
There's some features in here I made for you, basically. I don't know if you know they exist, but every single label on the EQ or the gains are actually buttons, so that you don't have to drag that mouse around it if you know right where you want to go.
Yes, you told me that.
Well, and like, do the plus and minus work as well for adjusting gain?
Yeah, well, actually, if you click on like the band symbol there next to the high band there, it will cycle, and if you hit shift, it will reverse cycle, and that goes for every filter on here.
But then as far as the gain goes, you still have to physically adjust the gain, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Except for on the red knob, every one of those labels and even the dots are a specific gain value.
Yeah, that I knew. You told me that a long time ago.
Okay. But I mean, if you're in circular, it's not really an issue. But for linear folks, it's a convenience thing if you want to just get right to the value that you want.
Because I think that was on the API that you told me. Because for some reason, I think I was always I couldn't Yeah, there it goes. It just felt so weird to me. And I asked you one day, and he was like, "Oh, there's hit the plus and the minus button." And then I ran to my rig, and I went, "Are you kidding me? That's all it is?" And then your response to that was, "It's in the manual, dude. I don't read manuals. I'm an engineer. What are you reading a manual for?"
You ain't got time for that.
You remember that time we were at the Tape Op Con and I was doing a thing in the AM, and
that's what it was. That's what it was.
Asleep. Yeah, everybody was like,
"You did that." It was the last Tape Op. You were talking about you brought up the 550, and you're like, "Oh, and so if you want to adjust your gain, you just click the plus or minus." And I went, "What the?" I dropped an F-bomb. Are you kidding me?
What? Then I told him about that the load lock feature where you can reduce your DSP footprint by just turning off load lock. Mm-hmm. And he literally stood up and said, "What? How come nobody ever told me?"
The manual, dude.
Well, we can't drop a killer hint like that without showing people what you're talking about here. So you're talking in UAD meter. You
go back to the meter.
Mm-hmm.
Go to your prefs. So let's just make sure you got it on. You got DSP load lock off, so that's a good boy.
Mm-hmm. Now, so what does that do exactly?
Okay, so go over to the 1084.
Mm-hmm. 1084. Okay. Oops.
And make sure that UAD meter is open that you had.
Oh, sorry.
Just need that one, yeah. So check out the the display of the DSP meter. Now disable the EQ. You just save some DSP.
All right.
You must have a lot of DSPs because it's not making much of a dent. How many DSPs you got?
Oh, what am I? I'm 3 octaves and a quad.
Okay, that's a lot. Normally, so
for
the
a normal person,
for a normal quad user, you'd be seeing what, like 5-10%?
For a normal quad user, this 1084 would take up. You would actually go from let's say 90% of taking up a chip to 10%.
Wow.
So the EQ modeling actually takes up most of the DSP hit of a 1073 or 1084.
Okay, so I just bypassed it.
Mm-hmm.
If you just turn off the EQ, you get all that savings back. So if you know you're only going to use the preamp, then might as well turn off the EQ and save that DSP, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a really handy hint, and a lot of people they sleep on this DSP load lock feature, and it's a great way, especially on a smaller DSP system. If you're not using the EQ, or if you're not using, I know some of the dynamics on like the SSL, like different.
Anything that's got a channel strip, there's usually modular DSP savings. Like, if you turn off the compressor, the EQ, boom, you just saved all that.
Nice. And so, what are the cases when people should have something like load lock turned on?
I would say load lock off is sort of a power user mode.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not sure that you might later turn on something.
Yeah. So kind of like you can use it to reserve the DSP. Like, maybe I'm gonna need this EQ, maybe not. Like,
yeah. So you just gotta. That's the pros and cons, right? If you're kind of thinking, well, I might turn it on later, then maybe just leave DSP load lock on. That's the default setting, actually. Nice. And by the way, another cool differentiator between the hardware is on those cut filters. They actually still operate with the EQ off under unison mode.
So
if you want to shave off, some rumble, or even knock down some top end, some noise or whatever, you can just track with that on and not have to have the EQ enabled.
Okay.
But it's only in unison mode, right?
Only unison, yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's smart. That's great.
That's true for the 1073 as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, man, Darrell, man, this hour has flown by, and it flew by even quicker once we got the interrupting Will. But what's really fun is for everyone that's watching.
Zoom bomb Will.
I know, right? Zoom bomb Will. But the cool part is Will is officially invited to tomorrow's. We have a Q&A session at 2:00 tomorrow afternoon. So I've seen you guys have got a lot of really good questions about the 1084, but also just UAD plugins in general. We're gonna have Will back on tomorrow afternoon, and he's gonna answer all of those questions for you guys. So we're gonna have a big old geek fest tomorrow afternoon, talking about all the DSP.
Is it called Stump Will Day?
I think so. I think that should be the challenge for everybody watching. Should be like, can we stump Will somehow, or get him to divulge all of our deep dark secrets?
We should make sure that Darrell has access to the invite just in case he wants to pop in and say, "No way!"
Are you kidding me?
Right?
It's gonna happen.
I would love to. I don't think I'll be able to, but I would love to.
Nice. Well, awesome. Well, Darrell, man, I really do appreciate it, though. Like, first of all, for sharing so much knowledge and experience here with us today, and really great song, and of course, always with the presets too, man. We really do appreciate people like yourself contributing and kind of giving people really helpful places to start when they're exploring these plugins.
I've got to call a few friends right now because like JJ's in here.
It's good to call them and tease them about their presets.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, great.
The one thing that I did do once is a client was saying that the rooms were sounding too harsh, and I do have on the 560. Yeah, the 560. He was complaining that the rooms were too harsh, and so I put this on, and he's sitting over my shoulder and he's watching me, and I just go to here and I go there, and he just goes, and I look at him and he's like, "Okay, that was pretty good."
You only need one preset for me. That's the drum room. Here you go.
There you go.
Nice. Well, awesome. Well, Darrell, man, I appreciate you spending your afternoon here with us. And
thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And we'll catch you guys at the next office hours.
Good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you, Will. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks, guys.